Good Friday morning. This is Don Palayo checking in with you guys. I I know it's been a little while. I try so hard to get videos out as often as I can. It's just I'm so busy these days. I work a lot during the week, and so it's kind of hard for me to put up videos out in the week because I go to work, early. I'm usually there by 8, and then in the I work until 5 at my normal job, and then I DoorDash until about 8 in the evening, and so then I come home and I'm dead tired, and I'm just ready to go to bed. I've got to carve out some time. I got to manage my calendar, my schedule a little better. Um, I got a lot on my mind today. I went to the coin shop today. I like my coin hobby, and I need more money to spend on my coin hobby. I'm kind of filling out some coin albums. I did pick up a couple of pretty Mercury dimes today. Pretty nice looking Mercury dimes. If you know anything about coin collecting, they've got the full bands on them on the back. On the torch. So I think it was a 1936, and one was a 1943S. So those are the ones I got. I also got a few other coins that I needed. I got a couple of Susan B. Anthony dollars that I just needed for my album. A few other things. I spent about $25. It wasn't a lot of money, but I need with coin hobby. If anybody knows anything about the coin hobby, it can get pricey very quick. I sometimes I look back on my life and I wish I had become like an attorney, making $500,000 a year because my hobby I kind of need it. But anyway, that's okay. That's all right. I'm I don't ever plan on selling any of this stuff. This is all things I'm planning on handing down to my posterity, my kids. I'm hoping that my daughters will have children one day. To me, it's like having kids is such a big part of life, and it's like life would be really. If I had never had children, I wouldn't have anybody right now except for my parents and my brothers, and so I'm very happy that I had children. It's like I have someone to hand down things to, and I'm hoping that they will hand it down to their kids. That's kind of the plan with something like this. Um, I So I don't know if my daughters are quite as interested in this stuff as I am. I don't know. I think there's just something special about these historical things, these, you know, things from our history, things from our past, and girls sometimes are a lot more focused on the here and now and on the future, and I don't know. I think about the past a lot. Not necessarily the long past, but my past a lot. I overdo it a little too much. I struggle with that. I really think that's something I need to work on. I've tried in the past, but there were some key moments in my life that really have defined who I am today. I guess we've all gone through something like that. I think about back on certain key moments in my life when I was in elementary school, when I was young. I was pretty extroverted. I was a pretty strong extrovert in elementary school. The further you go back, the more extroverted I was. When I was in kindergarten, first grade, I was off the walls, you know. But even in fifth grade, I was fairly extroverted. I went to middle school in sixth grade. Middle school changed my personality. It absolutely did. My experience in middle school. Um, I went through a lot of bullying, especially in sixth grade. Sixth grade was like I often refer to that year as the worst year of my life. I had a really hard time in the sixth grade, and there were a lot of guys that were quite a bit bigger than I was. I hadn't hit some of my bigger growth spurts yet, and I was getting beaten up on a pretty routine basis. Couldn't really get the schools to do anything about it, and the teachers wouldn't do anything. The principal wouldn't do anything. The people that it was like I was in hell. I mean, it really was. All these people I was going to school with, it just felt like they were future ex-cons. I mean, basically that's the kind of people I was going to school with. Um, so I didn't really like anybody there because of that. I really closed in on myself, and I became very, very introverted after that. And that still stays with me to this day a little bit. I still have a hard time developing strong connections with other people. And I think that's a big part of it, was stemming from back then. And then, I had a real heavy, difficult loss when I was, I met a girl when I was in my early teens that I really had a thing for. It's so weird, the things that, little small events. I think girls, a lot of times, they think that guys, that we're only interested in them for the way they look. And I mean, sure that, there's always going to be an element of that, I guess, with guys. But we are actually deeper than that, believe it or not. There was an event that happened with this one girl. I was 13 years old, and at the time I was completely antisocial. I didn't like people hardly at all. And at my church that I was going to, there was a big change right as I was getting out of middle school. The ward with the congregations kind of changed up a little bit. The Mormon church, what they call reorganizing of the ward boundaries, and I was basically in a new congregation. And there were a lot of new people there that I didn't know. I didn't know these people from Adam, really. And honestly, at the time, that was fine with me. I didn't really want to know anybody. um, at 13, I was pretty antisocial. Um, that summer, after eighth grade, I went on a trip down to Atlanta. It was we were doing like a youth conference. It was a conference for young people, and we took a bus, a big one of those big Greyhound style buses, down to Atlanta. And I was trying to find a way to avoid everybody, and found a seat kind of in the middle of the bus. If you're walking towards the back, it would have been on the left side. I sat down in the window seat. I had a backpack with me that had all my personal belongings in it, and I stuck it in the aisle seat next to me. I put it there specifically to prevent anyone from sitting with me. And and then I just stared out the window, and I was staring out the window so I wouldn't make eye contact with anybody on the bus. And anyway, 3 hours went by and no one bothered me. I kind of had relaxed a little bit. I was kind of all nice and cozy in my comfort zone. And about 3 hours into that bus trip, I'm staring out the window and I feel that backpack sitting there. The one that I had put in the seat next to me, I could feel it being moved. My backpack was moving. I realized it wasn't moving by itself. There was someone there moving it. And the first thought that came to my head was, I'm under attack, but because of my time in middle school. That was just the first thought that went through my head. I remember my right hand. By the time I got out of eighth grade, I was quite a bit bigger and I could defend myself a little bit easier. So I remember my right hand just immediately curled into a fist. I whirl around. I'm about ready to launch a missile at somebody's face, right? Well, I turned around expecting to see this huge, big, ugly dude. It's just the way my life had been going for a while. No. Standing there in the middle of the aisle is this little blonde-haired girl. She was just standing there. She's got my backpack in her hands, and I just remember I just froze. I was this close from hitting this girl. And I just totally surprised that there was a girl there. Girls didn't really interact with me back then. Girls were a little bit of an alien species to me at the time. I didn't have any sisters growing up. I didn't ever hang out with girls. Just girls weren't really part of my life at the time. So I remember it caught me off guard that it was a girl. And then finally I'm like, why does she have my backpack? Give me my backpack. I snatched my backpack out of her hands. And as soon as I got the backpack away from her, she just plopped herself down in the seat. I didn't expect her to do that. And I mean, it was a jolt. I mean, I remember it felt like I was sitting in an electric chair and somebody just came over and just flipped the switch and I wasn't strapped down, like, oh my gosh, man. I about had a cardiac event on the bus that day. um, I didn't understand why this girl was sitting here. I didn't know what she wanted from me. I wasn't necessarily happy about the fact that she was sitting there. I was really, at the time, very antisocial. I was trying desperately to not draw attention to myself, and it had been going well for 3 hours. I was all nice and cozy, in my comfort zone, like I said, and this little blonde hair girl just came over and violently ripped me out of it. So I was a little bit irritated at the time this happened. I was a little bit annoyed. I wanted to be left alone. And she's sitting there. I didn't understand why she was there at the time. Now, being older, it took a bit of time, but I finally realized that she had apparently seen me sitting there. I never asked her about this, but she had seen me sitting there by myself, and I guess she felt bad that I wasn't talking to other people, but, that was my entire objective at the time. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I wanted everybody to leave me alone. So, anyway, we sat there for several minutes. Neither one of us said anything to each other. I didn't understand why she was there to begin with. I really was hoping she would get up and go back to the back of the bus where she belonged, back there in the troublemaker zone. That she had been sitting all the way in the very back, and where I came from, the kids in the very back of the bus, that's where the worst of the worst sat. So the fact that she was sitting back there, I was almost judging her based on her seating preference. Because all of the kids, when I was in middle school, everyone at my middle school was horrible. I was constantly surrounded by terrible people. And that was just the way things were in middle school for me. Anyway, this little blonde-haired girl was sitting there for a little while. After a few minutes, we sat there not speaking to one another. She got to feeling a little awkward. And she got up and she went back to the back of the bus where she belonged, back there in the troublemaker zone, And I'm still kind of reeling from the fact that this girl came over and sat with me. I didn't understand why she had come over to begin with at the time. Before that event, I was going to church, going to class, going home. I wasn't paying attention to a single soul there. After this event, I remember coming back, like after that trip, coming back to church and going into my Sunday school class. And that little blonde-haired girl was sitting there. And I remember thinking to myself, there's that little blonde-haired girl again. What is her deal anyway? And what I meant by that was all of the girls that I had known in middle school, they were kind of like, one of the comparisons I like to make with my middle school, it was like all the guys were future Hell's Angels and the girls were all future Hell's Angels girlfriends. That was the kind of people I was around in middle school. That was basically it. And so everyone there, no one there did anything to be nice. That did not exist in my middle school. So I was just accustomed to being around horrible people that, and it was just the way it was. And even the girls you had to watch your step. I mean, some of these girls carried switchblades in their pockets, I mean, it was like that, So I was still very wary of everyone, my age in particular. The adults, when you're 13, the adults don't really matter. But kids my age, I was leery of everybody. This little blonde hair girl, she didn't strike me, upon first glance. She didn't strike me like the girls that I was going to school with. It was like it became noticeable that she didn't seem like the same type of people I've been going to school with. I hadn't yet really differentiated between girls that I was at school with and girls at church, or my peers at school and my peers at church. I hadn't made that differentiation yet. Well, took several months. Several months went by. This was the following spring. I think this was probably April or May of the following year. By the way, this was 1990 when that trip happened. I was 13 years old. 91, April or May, right before my 15th birthday, I came home from school one day. And I walked into the house, and I was kind of on autopilot, just kind of going through my normal everyday routine. Came into the house, grabbed a little snack in the kitchen, walked into the living room, turned the TV on. I'd sit there and watch maybe an hour of television before I had to do homework and all of that, just to kind of unwind after school. Well, I go into the living room, I turn the TV on, I sit down. It wasn't like 15 seconds that this thought, I had not been thinking about church. I had not been thinking about her. I was not really thinking at all much. I was kind of on autopilot, like I said. And all of a sudden, this thought just poof into my head. I said, you know what? I think that little blonde hair girl is really like that. I think that's really the way she is. I think for that whole time between that youth conference and that spring after, I had been kind of observing her. And it was almost like I was waiting. I was waiting to see. I thought maybe that she was wearing a facade, that I would eventually see that mask slip and I would see the people at my middle school, And I thought, well, her parents are here at church. She probably has to kind of behave herself here at church. She can't cause too much trouble here at church because her parents are here. But you catch her at school, and she's just like the people I'm going to school with. And that was really what I thought at first. Fast forward about 9 months, I'm starting to figure it out. She's not like that. And finally, it starts making more sense to me. And I know that after that day, when I began to realize this was genuinely the kind of person she was, this is when I began to feel very awkward around her. Just being around her, I felt awkward. It was almost like I had discovered a new life form, almost. It was like I had discovered a new life, some new form of life. You don't know if it's safe or if it's dangerous, kind of thing, it's like, now the next phase, I don't know exactly when this happened. I just know that I felt very awkward around her for several months after that. That was right before my 15th birthday. I know that for a fact that by the time I turned 16, it was over. It was done. I didn't even really know what was happening, really. But I developed very strong feelings for this girl. And it wasn't anything physical. I mean, honest to goodness, that had very little to do with it. I mean, she was cute. I thought she was cute. She was probably about 5'4", 5'5", blonde hair, blue eyes. She was cute. She was fit. She ran cross country, that kind of thing. And so, she was cute, but that had very little to do with it. It was more of just, I realized that she wasn't like all these people that I had been surrounded by for a long time. And granted, most of the people at my church were not like the people at my middle school. But this little blonde haired girl, she was the only person on that bus that day that got up and came over and tried to talk to me, tried to interact with me at all. And I've always remembered that. I'm 48 years old now. I was 13 at the time, so that was 35 years ago, and I still remember it like yesterday. So, long fast forward a few years, we graduate high school. She goes out west to go to school. I got real depressed after she left. I So much so that I had to talk to a friend of mine. I talked to one of my friends about this girl, and I told him I was trying to get advice from him on what I should do, because for 4 years I hadn't paid attention to anybody else. She was the only girl that I had paid any attention to at all. And to be honest with you, I'd never even thought about it. And my friend says, Forrest, you really need to get to know some other girls. You can't just like focus on one. You got to get to know several different girls, and so that you can kind of compare and contrast. And it wasn't what I wanted to hear at the time. I had no interest in his suggestion. I had never even thought about it. I am the kind of person that once I kind of fix in on a particular person, that's pretty much it, you know. Well, I went home that day and I thought about what he said, and I was like, maybe my friend's right. Maybe he's right. Maybe I do need to try to get to know some other girls. So then this little phase went through where I started trying to get to know some other girls at church, and it was never really that very natural, and it felt awkward to me. I think I made them feel awkward. The whole thing was just awkward, and it just never was. It never was really right. You know, I still, deep down inside, I was still thinking about this other girl. Anyway, fast forward another year, and I'm leaving the country. I'm going on my mission to Spain. And I go to Spain for 2 years, serving my mission for the church. I come home from Spain. That following day I came home, I was at church, and the little blonde haired girl was there. And I had an opportunity to say something, and I didn't take it. And it has been a regret of mine ever since. It bothers me. I think about that day pretty much every single day. I have thought about that day. Every single day since that time, I have thought about it. And I was never very comfortable in these social interactions with girls. You know, I was very green, very raw. Hadn't dated very much, really, at all. And really had no idea what I was doing at the time. I really had no clue what I was doing back then. And long story short, she met someone else and got married, and that was it. And that's also been one of the key defining moments of my life. You know, it's I think it impacted my life in a pretty big way. I think that it's one of the reasons why I've been divorced twice. I hate saying that, but it's true. I tried to follow the church path and get married and have that life, and it just wasn't right. It never felt right. I was living a lie, basically, and I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. So my first marriage ended after about 8 years of me going through that, and I was miserable most of it, pretty much the whole time. I mean, I loved watching my kids grow up, but the relationships were just never right. My second wife was she, you know, honestly though, it's like I look back on my marriages, and I'm not trying to talk junk about my exes. That's not what this is about. But my first wife, it just never felt like she wanted to have anything to do with me, really, much at all. My second wife just acted like she hated my guts for 3 years. Um, when I look back on it, I don't really feel like I've ever had a girl that really genuinely cared much about me at all. I've never really seen that. I've never experienced that. To this day, I really haven't, and that's kind of one of the bigger disappointments of my life. It's kind of sad, but it's true. Um, I don't feel like I've ever had a girl that really genuinely cared about me that much. Um, it's just the reality of life, and when I was in my early 20s, I was in a lot of pain back then. Um, I I didn't deal with all of that very well. Today, there's still pain in it, but it's all focused on that with or surrounding that one girl. None of these other girls that I tried to date, it wasn't natural. It's like I was trying to, maybe I was even trying to fix my situation, by, anyway, it just didn't work out. It didn't work right. So, anyway, after my first marriage, I wasn't really planning on getting married again. I wound up getting married a second time, and that was a huge mistake. And now I'm like, there's no way I will never ever go back down that road again. And the main reason I say that is because I know that it's gonna end the same way. I already know it will, because it's like my heart's kind of still set on that one person, and it's just always been that way. And I don't expect that to change. So that's just kind of the way it is. But we all have these things that we go through in life, these difficult moments in our lives, and some people handle it in different ways. We've been seeing violence at some of these we saw a shooting at Florida State the other day. Some people don't know how to deal with their frustration, their anger, their hurt, all these feelings that people have, these emotions that people have. Some people just don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to deal with it. I didn't deal with it the right way. You know, when I look back on my life, I have no regrets about having children at all, but I probably shouldn't have gotten married after I lost that one girl. I should have stayed single, but it is what it is. Um, it just wasn't right. It wasn't. It just I kind of messed up, my own life a little bit by getting married to people that I didn't stay with, and it just wasn't meant to be, I don't think. So, um, I don't know why I'm telling you all this. But I deal with these thoughts every day, and it's like I wish I could turn that off. I would love to be able to turn those thoughts off, not think about it. Easier said than done. Um, that that was one of the most critical moments of my life, really. That day I came home from my mission. Um, Now basically all I do is work. I'm putting money aside for my kids. I've kind of gotten to a point now where I'm just planning on working as long as I possibly can so I can leave my kids as much as I possibly can. I don't even know if I'm going to touch my retirement assets. I think I'm just going to keep building my retirement assets. And, when you hit 73, you have to take those required minimum distributions. But I'm probably going to start making Roth conversions. And um, that way I don't have to take withdrawals. Just let it grow tax free. And then my kids will inherit it, and they can, you know, live good lives. And I hope they don't make some of the same mistakes I made. Relationships are pretty tough these days, even tougher than when I was that age. I think that our the hearts of men have kind of grown cold, as the scriptures talk about. Um, Everybody's trying to use everybody. Men are trying to use women. Women are trying to use men. nobody really seems to really care about one another at all. It just, um, I don't know. It's going to be difficult to find a genuine person. It's like that's not easy anymore, um, as it once was. But anyway, people, we got to find ways of dealing with our emotions a better way. Focusing more in the here and now, and more on the future than in the past. The past is done. There's nothing we can do about it. Can't change it. Um, as much as we might want to. It's like if only I had a DeLorean to go back to, the past, and smack myself upside the head. I've had that thought a time or two. Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad deal if I had that option. But unfortunately, it is what it is. But anyway, I'm going to try to do some laundry, get my house organized a little bit. It's a long weekend for me. I'm going to be door dashing tonight and tomorrow night, most of the day tomorrow. I'm going to try to rack up some money this weekend. Uh, I need an infusion of cash. It's like I've been working on paying off bills, paying off debt, and I'm making a lot of headway. And I think by around July, I'm going to be in a position where I'll have one of my big bills paid off, and a big payment. I'm making $800 a month payments on that thing, and that'll be gone. And I'm like, ooh, I'll have $800 a month. Start building up my savings a little bit more. And then I've got a few other bills I want to pay off, but I can increase my cash flow by the end of the year by probably $1,000, $1,200 a month. And if I might get a raise, there's a possible. I'm going to talk to my boss in the summer about a raise. If that might be an extra $200 or $300 a month net. So we'll see. I can put some more money aside and buy some more coins too. Add to my coin collection. I really am trying to finish out. I really want to finish out my Lincoln cent collection. I have a collection of Lincoln cents, but I'm getting back to the 1920s. Right now, I'm working on the 31S, which the 31S, to get one, I want to get one like MS 63 or 64. You're talking a $400 or $500 coin. It's not, these coins get more expensive once you get back there. I also want to, I'm going to get through the 20s. I don't think any of the pennies in the 20s are that expensive. I think there's a 1924 that's a little bit expensive, not too bad. But then when you get back into the teens, there's two of them. Well, in the teens there's one. There's the 1914D. And that's probably gonna run me about $1,500. And then there is the 1909 SVDB penny, and that's probably going to be another 1,500, 2,000. So those two pennies. But I will have a beautiful, complete Lincoln cent collection that I'll be able to hand down to my children. I think that'll be kind of cool. I do want to. I'm also finishing up the Jefferson nickels, the Roosevelt dimes, the Washington quarters, and then I'm going to go back and work on Buffalo nickels. Try to get as many of those as I can. Mercury dimes. I do want to, in my life, buy that 1916D Mercury dime, which is extremely expensive. I probably won't be able to afford that in MS 63, 64. I'll probably settle for maybe an MS 60, maybe even like an AU 50. I'd like to get a Mint State one, like at least 60, but that's probably going to cost me in the neighborhood of $10,000 for that particular coin for one dime. That one's probably going to be about $10,000 to buy that. So I don't know if I'll ever get to that point. I might not. We'll see. there's a lot you can do with $10,000, and I don't know if pouring $10,000 into a dime makes a lot of sense. It might make more sense for me to go buy some land or something with that. um, we'll see. We'll see. I'm going to think about that, but I've got some time to wait on that. But like I said, if I'm putting away, if I'm freeing up $1,000 a month in cash flow and putting that into savings, I can build up a nice chunk of change pretty quick. On top of what I'm already doing. I mean, I'm already contributing to my IRA, blah 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 blah, all of that, my retirement accounts. But I'm tired. I feel like I've just been running myself ragged. Anyway, this is going on about 35 minutes. I hate to end this happy video here. But everyone have a great weekend. Have a great Easter weekend. I'll be spending Easter Sunday with my parents, and should have a great time. Looking forward to it. Y'all have a great weekend.